Welcome back to the Connection Hub. This is episode 3 of a podcast series I'm doing, and we're going to be talking about the illusion of the physical world. I'm going to break this conversation down in 3 separate segments. In the first portion of this episode, I want to talk about the signs that we receive. In the second segment, I'm going to share stories of how I came to understand the physical world as the illusion it actually is. And then in the last third of the show, I want to talk about neutralizing our perception. This is going to be talking about the different ideas around good and bad. But before we jump into anything, I really do just want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me, for coming onto the Connection Hub and checking out my content, and for leaving comments. I absolutely love meeting people and having the opportunity and the chance to get to know people that I might not have been able to meet otherwise. So I am extremely grateful for hanging out, and I just want to say that I appreciate you. Let's go ahead and dive into the concept of receiving signs. I'll never forget when I noticed the universe opening up for me. I noticed signs everywhere. Numbers were becoming very predominant in my life. I was noticing 333 and 111 and all the synchronistic moments happening throughout my day. There was one afternoon in particular, I was sitting in a park with a friend at the time, and she asked me if I had heard of Abraham Hicks. And I'm there, no, I have no clue who you're talking about. And she's there, well, I was listening to Abraham Hicks earlier, and Abraham said that for every sign we receive, there's 5,000 other signs that surround us at any given time. It blew me out of the water, and I'll never forget, my first initial thought was, how am I going to keep up with everything the universe wants to communicate with me through signs? And so I realized very quickly from that point on, where my attention landed was specifically for me. It was something for me to pay attention to. It was something for me to notice and to be mindful about. And that really helped me to develop my own line of communication with Source, with God. What I want to say next really dawned on me last weekend in particular, but it was an idea that started to creep into my knowing, into my awareness about a year ago. The concept that I want to share today is this idea of receiving signs and holding on to them for ourselves. And I share this because there was a moment where something really special had happened for me, and I was absolutely thrilled. There were beautiful signs that were given to me. It was a beautiful knowing. It was a beautiful resonance with my soul. And I'll never forget, I was on a hike with someone, and I turned to them and I said, listen, something really incredible happened for me. I had one of the biggest aha moments of my life. And my friend looked at me and she goes, tell me. And I shared what had happened for me. And all of a sudden, what I felt in my friend was this complete closing down. It was like a wall had gone up and there was no more openness to the conversation. For me, this joy and this exuberant expression I had, and this like, oh my gosh, this amazing thing happened for me. And after sharing it and then feeling this person's reaction to it, it instantly brought me from being on this gorgeous spiritual high back down into a heavier earth sensation, a heavier earth emotion. And it was because I picked up and noticed that there was something in there that caused disruption. a little bit of jealousy. I mean, we're human. It's a natural emotion. It's a natural thing that happens. At the time, I got a little bit beside myself and really just wanted to know, well, why? As time has gone on and as these moments continue to happen, as far as receiving signs, as far as receiving inner wisdom, inner knowledge, I've understood more and more how important it is to keep these moments close and to keep them so close to the heart until that high has had time to settle. Then and only then will I make the decision to share what I want to share with others. When it comes to receiving our signs and when it comes to developing this line of communication and this dialogue with God, with Source, it really is such a intimate expression. What I can see is there are so many experiences that have been shared outwardly with others that those experiences have also molded and sculpted the experiences of others. I'm going to give you a really simple example, and that's the example of seeing a butterfly or a cardinal as a loved one in spirit. There's absolutely nothing wrong with associating these two things as being your loved one in spirit. Can we look a little bit deeper into the meaning that these beautiful animals have for us when they come to visit us? Maybe see that as an invitation to sit and have a conversation with your mom. Sit with them, have a conversation, ask questions, say a quick hello if you're busy or if you're in the middle of something. And then the second part to that is to see if the butterfly or if the cardinal has something else they wish to bring you in that moment. If you really want to get playful and if you really want to get specific, when signs come to you or when you notice things, before jumping onto Google, before asking anyone else, well, what does this sign mean? Why not get quiet with yourself and do a little bit of digging? Ask, what could this be telling me right now? What could this sign be communicating to me in the moment? Take a look at what else is happening in the environment. Maybe notice what thoughts are going through your own mind. And in this way, you really do end up putting together pieces of your own individual puzzle that will guide you and support you for all of your days in your own unique way. I think the other thing to consider with signs, when we see something, not necessarily taking it at face value. On my walk last weekend, for whatever reason, I kept looking down towards the sidewalk on this entire walk. And I'm typically one that walks with at least my chin parallel to the ground or up in the air. I'm always looking at the sky and the trees and the birds. But on this particular walk, I had my focus down on the ground and I ended up seeing all these different things. I saw a dead blue jay for one, and this was the share that I wanted to give here. And at first I was like, no, like A, it's a blue jay. And B, it's dead. And then when I composed my inner self, clearly I was meant to see that, right? It's where my eyes landed. I was meant to see that. So what is in there for me? I thought, okay, there is a new beginning. Like there has been a death and there is a new beginning that is rising up and coming up in my life right now. A few years ago, had I been walking along the street and noticing a dead blue jay, I probably would have just been maybe a bit beside myself and think, oh, this is awful, or oh, what a bad omen. But the dead bird isn't what it seems. What is it that it's communicating to me? By just taking a second, just taking a moment to to get curious. And by just asking, I was able to get my meaning, to get my understanding, and to get clarity from that situation for me. When you notice signs and really when you engage in your physical sight, there is something for you to see. This is where you can really open yourself up to the meaning or the feeling certain colors give you, or the meaning and feeling certain plants give you, or certain flowers or certain animals. What do the things in nature, what do the things that surround you invoke within you? Now getting into how I learned about illusion firsthand. When I was still drinking, I walked to my favorite bar and I ordered my pint, and I was sitting there and I noticed someone sitting at the bar. And on this day, my clairaudience spoke so loudly to me, it shook me. Very loud and very clear instructions. Vanessa, get up and go say hi to them. Believe it or not, actually, at the time, I was pretty extroverted. So I'm surprised that I hesitated, waited a few more minutes, and it was Vanessa, go now. Jolted me out of my seat, and I find myself walking over to this person. And I said, hello, would you like some company? They looked at their beer and they had a couple sips left, and sure, but I'm not going to be here for much longer. And I thought, that's okay. So I sat down, and didn't we end up having a conversation for the next, I think, like 7 hours? We talked and talked and talked. Even some of the things that we were talking about, he stepped away to use the washroom, and I'm there, oh, what are we going to talk about next? And I thought to myself, let's talk about golf. And doesn't he come back and ask me if I played golf? And I just thought, wow, like this is something else. Asked me like, oh, like, are you dating anyone? Are you single? And they're, oh, no, like I'm single. And I had this line that I had only told a couple of people whenever the topic of conversation came up. And I said to him, I want to meet someone that I can just sit and build a puzzle with. And they looked at me in complete shock and said, well, what do you mean? Like, what kind of puzzle? Like a 1,000-piece puzzle? I'm there, well, 3 is my favorite number, so I'd go for 3,000 pieces. And he's there, Vanessa, something the other day just told me, go buy a puzzle. Doesn't he pull out his phone and show me the notes app? Go buy a puzzle. My jaw drops. My heart just explodes open. And here I'm thinking, this is it. I have found the one. And classic Vanessa, I just fell head over heels. I didn't need to know anything else about him. I was convinced that I had found my penguin. I end up finding out that they had a girlfriend. So then I was heartbroken. And then at the end of our time together, I hugged him goodbye, and I'm walking back to my apartment, and I'm just thinking to myself, there's still hope. The next day I woke up and I was a completely different person. Just by meeting this person. The biggest lesson for me that day was never, ever ignore the inner voice ever again. We had sent a couple of texts back and forth, but nothing that stuck. And I was red flag material. Like the things that I was posting on my Instagram story, I was just way too over the top. But back to the illusion, I was just heartbroken because the conversation we had screamed nothing but this was meant to be. Fast forward 8 months or so later, I have my shoes on and I leave the house and I'm going out for a walk. And God said, as clear as day, Vanessa, are you ready to learn about illusion? It was time that I learned exactly what had taken place. And so as I'm walking up the street, no sooner do I turn the corner and God says, "Do you see that bush over there? It's not a bush." The physical bush completely disappeared, and it was nothing but the most gorgeous, beautiful, golden God light. The further I walk, he says, "Look, Vanessa." And I'm looking around, and it's like I was still in the physical world. I could still physically feel my feet on the ground, and I could still perceive the physical structures in front of me, but it was all light. No sooner am I brought back to the bar, sitting on the stool beside my one-day friend. And God says, "Vanessa, look." In my mind's eye, I could see that his entire physical structure had completely disappeared. And I was watching myself in that bar speaking to God, speaking to pure, divine, golden God light. And in that moment, it had finally dawned on me. Nothing is what it seems. I had been holding on to this idea that that guy was that person. I thought that everything that he was saying was him, and everything he was him, like him in his physical form. This isn't foreign to any one of us. We see something physical and it's like, that's what it is. That is a dresser. That is a bed. That is a tree. That is a man. That is a dog. That is a bird. We have these labels on everything. And what God was showing me on this walk is just that. It's this perception that as humans have with all of these labels and titling everything, where we actually have the opportunity to take a step back and realize that God is at play and at hand in everything we experience, and not just the mushy gushy great feeling stuff. God is there behind it all. Absolutely all of it. And that was when I really understood the illusion. Do I still get caught up on the fact that I am a human in physical form on the physical earth? Absolutely, 100%. It's not something that I just shut off. But more often than not, typically it's when any disturbances come in, when any discomfort comes in, when I'm going through any challenge, I really am given the opportunity to step back and start asking why. What is lending itself to me for my growth? To bring it closer to home and to make it even more personal, really considering the people in our life and the roles that these people play, if that's mother or father or brother or sister or cousin, everyone has some sort of title. Everyone has some sort of role. The next time anyone in your life is posing as a challenge or posing as someone who's being difficult, take a step back to see the God light within them and to start asking how this is advancing you as a soul. Consider every person in this world being a drop of water in the ocean that is just leading us all to shore. Amen. Buckle up because we're now entering the third segment of this episode, which is neutralizing our perception around good and bad. The way I feel about the world, about life events, about trauma, about good, about bad, about anything that most people see as absolutely devastating, my view and opinion is different. I'm just going to throw that out there. If you don't feel like you're in a good headspace to be sitting and listening or watching me even talk about this topic, play it safe and just turn the video off. I don't see things as good or bad. Over the last few years, I have done a lot of work and a lot of consideration with keeping my perception on the world as neutral as possible. We'll start off by using the example of murder. I'm not a fool. But when I think about murder, I don't see it as being either good or bad. I see it as being a decision, a choice. It's a choice that someone makes. Now, do I view that choice as being the optimal choice? No, absolutely not. I think that we can all agree, no matter where our stance is on this topic, that murder isn't the most optimal choice someone could make. However, it's still just a choice. And in saying that, I'm coming from a place where I know, the choices people make do not disappoint God any more or any less. When it comes to low vibrational choices that are made out of fear, out of anger, out of distress, out of anxiety, depression, all of the not so optimal emotions that stir within us and project out through action. Like I said, these aren't optimal. It's not optimal. It's important, not only as people, but it's our mission as souls to overcome these low vibrational emotions, these low vibrational actions and decisions and choices that play out from the way that we feel when we're resonating down here. The choices and actions and decisions that we make when we're vibrating at a much higher place, I would consider to be more optimal, but it doesn't make these decisions and choices any more good or bad than any other decision that someone can make. It just is what it is. And now I'm going to explain where this seed was planted for me. It was maybe about 4 summers ago now. I was laying on my bed in meditation and I was transported back to a past memory in a previous life. And in this moment in time, during that lifetime, it was definitely during World War II. And I was on my way to a concentration camp or somewhere. I was tight and stuck in a train. And when I asked, how old am I knew I was young. And I looked around and I was standing waist high with all the other people around me. And then all of a sudden, I received a very quick vision, and in this vision, bombs had dropped and they ended up exploding this train. And that was the end of my life. That's how I died. My reaction to that event, as I'm laying on my bed and recalling what had happened, was probably more surprising to me than anything else. And I just remember bawling my eyes out because my heart was so open with gratitude. And on this continuous mantra, I just was like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I was giving thanks for dropping the bomb on that train. And so coming out of that regression, I was seeing death and what people consider tragedy in a completely different light. War and the way people die and how people die and everything I was able to perceive and see in a completely different way. And this is where the illusion lays so thick. When we look out and we see tragedy and we see things that are awful, like I'm not saying that when terrible things happen, it's just like, whatever, let's brush it under the rug. There's a time for compassion. There's a time to express love. There's a time for silence. There's a time for just holding that peace for everyone involved in the situations that happen in this world. But what I've noticed in just observing the world and observing my own past behavior around things is When someone else is suffering, it's sometimes easier for us to latch onto their suffering because we don't want to focus on and feel what's happening within us. Sometimes it can be very difficult to keep everyone's story separate from our own. And this is where it becomes so incredibly easy to get tied up in the mess of it all, in everything that doesn't seem right with the world. But if we can even just for a split second consider the perfection in all of it and how everything is exactly the way that it is meant to be, then we could possibly take a step back and realize that there's nothing in question, that everything is just the way it is, and that we all return back home. We all sit with God. We all go into review. We all experience and relive our optimal choices and our not so optimal choices. And then when it's time, we all return back here and give it another go. I think that now more than ever, where there's so much divide, there are so many labels, there is so much focus on everything wrong in the world. Now more than ever, we have the opportunity to actually ask ourselves, how can I choose optimally? How can I reach the frequency of love, the higher vibration? How can I lift myself out of the lower emotions that drive me into habits and distractions and acting out in ways that don't make me feel great? It's not easy for the person who doesn't choose optimally to choose that. And this is where it's so important for those that have the capacity to have more compassion to give and share and really deliver that compassion out into the world, even if that compassion is a simple thought. If we can even just start with our thoughts and start changing our thoughts and seeing good and bad as not good and bad, but just neutral, the paradigm shifts that could actually take place are to even think about it is remarkable. We're in the season of Lent right now as I'm sitting here and recording this. And I can't help but, of course, think about Jesus and in knowing that he was sent here to not only lift the hearts of all of humanity and to forgive and give that forgiveness for absolutely anything and everything, the ultimate love and the ultimate compassion with every last one of us. But I also stop and I also think about Judas and his role and just how perfect and divine his role in Jesus's life was. And instead of feeling this anger or pain towards Judas, I feel this compassion and love towards him because he did everything that he was meant to do by the word of God to make sure that Jesus fulfilled his mission on earth. And that goes for Pontius Pilate. It goes for everyone that played their own specific role in the greatest story of saving humanity ever. I think that that truly is the pinnacle to understanding it just is what it is. And if we can hold that seed of compassion and grace and love towards everyone, no matter what it is they've done or what they're going through, the world, as we know, becomes such a beautiful place. Thank you for being with me, and at the end of the day, just hanging out, you and me. It's been absolutely beautiful and wonderful. Next week, along the same lines, I wanted to talk about the void and what our distractions and desires will never fill. This is something that I have a lot of personal experience in, and it does touch on that idea of reaching and always in search of what the physical world can fill us with. That discussion I am already so excited for, so don't forget to check it out. It is going to be a juicy one. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and click on the bell notification so you don't miss any of my other uploads. I upload at least 2 videos a week these days. Yeah, thanks again. Until next time, get lost in joy and remember, you are always connected.